The Words and Wisdom of Jesus. 10 Teachings for Life. By David Russo. Chapter 1. Love as the Way. Jesus taught that love is not a suggestion or an ideal reserved for special moments. He taught that love is the way life is meant to be lived, not as a feeling that comes and goes, but as a steady choice that shapes how we see others, how we respond to difficulty, and how we understand ourselves. In his teaching, love was never passive. It was not limited to affection for friends or kindness toward those who agreed with us. Love, as Jesus described it, moves outward. It reaches across differences. It remains present even when it would be easier to withdraw. It shows up not only in words, but in patience, mercy, and action. This kind of love asks more of us than comfort. It asks us to listen before we speak, to seek understanding before judgment, to respond with compassion even when we feel wronged. Jesus understood that love like this is difficult, but he also knew it is powerful. Love has the ability to soften hearts, restore dignity, and interrupt cycles of anger and division. In a world that often rewards self-interest, love can appear weak. But Jesus taught the opposite. He showed that love is strength under control. It is courage without violence. It is resilience that does not harden into bitterness. Love does not mean allowing harm or ignoring truth. It means choosing a response that leads toward healing rather than destruction. Jesus spoke about loving even those who oppose us, not because it is easy, but because it frees us from being ruled by resentment. Hatred keeps us bound to the very things that hurt us. Love, on the other hand, creates space for clarity, peace, and growth. It allows us to act from wisdom rather than impulse. Love also begins internally. Before it reaches others, it shapes the inner life. To live with love is to examine our thoughts, our assumptions, and our reactions. It is to ask whether our inner dialogue reflects patience or criticism, generosity or fear. Jesus taught that what flows outward is shaped by what we hold within. This teaching challenges us to look at how we speak to ourselves, how we treat those closest to us, and how we respond to people we may never see again. Love is revealed in everyday moments, in conversations, in disagreements, in silence, and in choices no one else may notice. Jesus understood that love changes not only relationships, but identity. When love becomes the foundation of life, success is no longer measured by status or control, but by faithfulness and compassion. The question shifts from what can I gain to how can I give, from who deserves this to what response leads toward good. Living this way does not mean life becomes easy. Love does not remove conflict or prevent pain, but it does provide direction. When decisions are unclear and emotions are strong, love becomes a guide. It asks what builds rather than tears down, what heals rather than harms. Jesus' wisdom invites a daily practice of reflection. At the beginning or end of each day, we can pause and ask, did love guide my words today? Did it shape my actions? Did it influence my thoughts? These questions are not meant to produce guilt, but awareness. Growth begins with attention. To choose love is to participate in something larger than ourselves. It connects us to others and reminds us that life is not meant to be lived in isolation. Love bridges distance. It restores trust. It creates meaning where there was once division. This is why Jesus placed love at the center of wisdom, not as an abstract idea, but as a lived reality. Love is not simply something we feel. It is something we practice, again and again, in small ways and significant ones. To walk the way of love is to choose a life shaped by patience, courage, and compassion. It is to trust that love, even when costly, leads to a deeper and wiser way of being. And in that choice, day by day, life begins to change. Chapter 2. Humility over pride. Jesus often spoke about greatness, but not in the way people expected. In a world that celebrates recognition, achievement, and power, he pointed in the opposite direction. He taught that true greatness is found not in lifting oneself above others, but in lowering oneself to serve. Humility, in his teaching, was not about thinking less of oneself. It was about thinking of oneself less. It was freedom from the constant need to prove worth, defend image, or compete for attention. Jesus understood that pride builds walls, while humility opens doors. Pride narrows our vision. It convinces us that our perspective is complete, our opinions are final, and our status defines our value. Humility, on the other hand, keeps us open. It allows us to learn from others, to admit when we are wrong, and to grow beyond our limitations. A humble heart remains curious rather than defensive. Jesus showed that humility is not weakness, it is strength guided by wisdom. It takes courage to listen instead of dominate. It takes confidence to serve without needing recognition. Humility does not seek the spotlight, yet it often leaves the deepest impact. He taught that those who chase importance often feel empty, while those who choose service discover purpose. When life becomes a race for approval, peace slips away. But when we release the need to be seen, heard, or praised, something unexpected happens. We become lighter, more present, more free. Humility also reshapes how we relate to others. It allows us to see people not as rivals or tools, but as equals. It softens conversations. It invites collaboration rather than control. When humility leads, relationships are built on respect instead of comparison. Jesus often challenged the idea that leadership means authority over others. Instead, he described leadership as responsibility for others. The humble leader lifts people up rather than standing above them. They create space for others to grow, succeed, and be heard. In daily life, humility appears in simple ways. It shows up when we admit mistakes without excuses, when we listen without interrupting, when we choose understanding over being right. These moments may seem small, but they shape character over time. Humility also teaches patience. It accepts that growth takes time and that wisdom is gained gradually. A humble person does not rush to judgment or demand immediate results. They trust the process of learning and allow life to shape them. Jesus warned that pride isolates. It separates us from others and even from truth. When pride leads, feedback feels like an attack and disagreement feels like disrespect. Humility changes this dynamic. It allows us to receive correction without shame and guidance without resentment. There is peace in humility. When we stop measuring ourselves against others, comparison loses its power. When we no longer strive to be superior, we are free to be authentic. Humility creates alignment between who we are and how we live. Jesus taught that those who humble themselves are lifted, not through force or self-promotion, but through trust and faithfulness. This lifting is not always visible to the world, but it is real. It appears as inner stability, clarity of purpose, and quiet confidence. A wise life, according to Jesus, is one that remains teachable, one that values growth over image and service over status. Humility keeps the heart open and the mind grounded. As we reflect on this teaching, we might ask ourselves, where am I holding tightly to pride? Where might humility bring freedom? These questions are not meant to judge, but to guide. To choose humility is to choose a deeper strength, one that does not need applause to endure, one that builds rather than competes, one that allows wisdom to take root. In humility, we discover that greatness is not something we claim, it is something we become. Chapter 3: Forgiveness that Heals. Forgiveness was central to the wisdom Jesus taught, not because wrongdoing is insignificant, and not because pain should be ignored, but because unresolved resentment quietly harms the one who carries it. Jesus understood that forgiveness is less about excusing the past and more about shaping the future. When someone is hurt, the natural response is to hold on tightly to the memory of the wrong. Anger feels protective. Bitterness feels justified. Yet over time, these emotions begin to weigh heavily on the heart. They consume energy, cloud judgment, and keep wounds open long after the moment has passed. Jesus spoke of forgiveness as a release, a way to loosen the grip of what no longer needs to control us. Forgiveness does not deny pain. It does not erase consequences or demand immediate reconciliation. Jesus never suggested that trust should be given without wisdom. Instead, he taught that forgiveness is an inner decision, one that frees the soul even when circumstances remain unchanged. In choosing forgiveness, we acknowledge the reality of harm while refusing to let it define us. We decide that our future will not be shaped by resentment, but by clarity and peace. This choice may come slowly. It may require time, reflection, and repeated intention. Forgiveness is often a process rather than a single moment. Jesus taught that mercy given has a way of returning. When we practice forgiveness, we become more aware of our own need for grace. This awareness softens judgment and deepens empathy. It reminds us that everyone carries unseen struggles, and that wisdom often begins with understanding. Holding on to anger narrows the heart. Forgiveness expands it. It restores emotional space where healing can begin. When resentment loosens its hold, energy once spent on bitterness becomes available for growth, creativity, and connection. Forgiveness also transforms how we see others. Instead of viewing people only through their worst actions, we begin to see complexity. We recognize that harm often flows from pain, fear, or brokenness. This understanding does not justify wrongdoing, but it opens the door to compassion. Jesus taught that forgiveness is powerful because it breaks cycles. Retaliation multiplies harm, but mercy interrupts it. When forgiveness enters a situation, it changes the direction of the story. It offers the possibility of restoration, even when full repair is not possible. There are moments when forgiveness feels impossible. When wounds are deep and trust has been shattered, the idea of release can feel overwhelming. Jesus did not dismiss this difficulty. His teaching invites honesty, acknowledging pain while still holding space for healing over time. Forgiveness also includes the self. Many carry regret, shame, or guilt for past choices. Jesus' wisdom reminds us that self-forgiveness is essential for growth. Without it, we remain trapped in cycles of self-criticism that prevent transformation. Mercy toward oneself allows learning without condemnation. In daily life, forgiveness often appears quietly. It shows up when we choose not to replay an old offense, when we respond with patience instead of retaliation, when we allow distance or boundaries without bitterness. These moments may go unnoticed by others, but they shape the inner world profoundly. Jesus taught that forgiveness leads toward freedom, not freedom from accountability, but freedom from being controlled by the past. When forgiveness becomes part of our way of life, the heart grows lighter and the mind becomes clearer. A wise life recognizes that carrying resentment is a heavy burden. Forgiveness sets it down. It creates room for peace, for wisdom, and for renewal. As we reflect, we might ask ourselves, where am I holding on to pain that no longer serves me? What might change if I chose release instead of resistance? Forgiveness does not erase the past, but it transforms how we live with it. And in that transformation, healing begins. Chapter 4. Faith in the Unseen. Jesus often spoke about trust. Trust that goes beyond what the eyes can see or the mind can fully understand. Faith, in his teaching, is not blind belief or wishful thinking. It is confident reliance on a reality larger than immediate circumstances, a steadfast hope that shapes how we live each day. Life is filled with uncertainty. We face questions we cannot answer, challenges we cannot control, and outcomes we cannot predict. Fear and doubt are natural responses. Yet Jesus invited people to move forward even when the path was unclear, to take steps guided by trust rather than certainty. Faith in the unseen requires courage. It asks us to hold hope when events seem discouraging, to act when outcomes are unknown, and to believe in possibilities that have not yet appeared. Jesus taught that the unseen is often where growth occurs. What is invisible to the eye can shape life more profoundly than what is visible. Trust, as he described it, is practical as well as spiritual. It influences decisions, shapes priorities, and determines how we respond to challenges. Faith is not passive. It calls for engagement with the world while holding a sense of assurance that we are supported, guided, and part of something enduring. Jesus compared faith to seeds, to small beginnings that grow into strength and abundance over time. Even a small measure of trust, he suggested, can accomplish what seems impossible. The heart that moves forward in faith often discovers resilience, insight, and creativity that certainty alone cannot produce. Faith also shapes perspective. When we trust in what is unseen, we are less bound by fear of failure or loss. We see difficulties not as permanent obstacles, but as part of a larger journey. We understand that growth often occurs in moments we cannot predict, and that lessons frequently arise from uncertainty itself. This type of faith is not naive. It does not deny reality or ignore difficulty. Rather, it allows us to meet life fully without being paralyzed by anxiety. It teaches patience, perseverance, and the ability to remain steady when circumstances fluctuate. Jesus taught that faith expands vision. It opens hearts to possibilities, encourages generosity of spirit, and strengthens the courage to act in ways that honor values even when outcomes are uncertain. Those who walk in faith learn to discern between what can be controlled and what must be entrusted. In practical terms, faith in the unseen appears in daily decisions. It shows up when we choose integrity over expedience, kindness over anger, and hope over despair. It is exercised in the quiet choices no one else observes. Yet these choices often determine the quality of life more than grand gestures. Faith also invites reflection. Each day offers moments to ask, where am I holding back because I cannot see the full path? Where might trust guide me to act despite fear? These questions are not meant to produce anxiety, but to nurture awareness and growth. Jesus' wisdom reminds us that life is not entirely predictable, and certainty is rare. Yet in the midst of unpredictability, a heart anchored in faith experiences steadiness. Even when outcomes are unclear, there is confidence that choices made with integrity and love are never wasted. To live with faith in the unseen is to move forward with courage. It is to embrace the unknown with hope, to act with purpose even when the full picture is hidden, and to trust that life's deeper currents are guiding us toward growth, learning, and meaningful connection. Faith is the lens through which challenges become opportunities, obstacles become lessons, and uncertainty becomes a teacher. Jesus' teaching encourages us to cultivate this trust daily, small step by small step, until it becomes a guiding principle in how we navigate the world. And in that steady reliance on what is unseen, life opens in ways that only faith can reveal. Chapter 5. Peace that the world cannot give. Jesus spoke often about peace, but not the kind that depends on circumstances, comfort, or control. He described a peace that comes from within, steady and unshakable, a quiet confidence that remains even when the world is chaotic. This peace is not the absence of trouble. It is the presence of trust, clarity, and calm in the midst of it. The world often promises peace through success, possessions, or power, but these forms of peace are fragile. They vanish when circumstances change or expectations are unmet. Jesus offered a different path, a peace that is rooted in inner alignment, in connection with what is good, and in trust that life, even with its uncertainties, has meaning. This kind of peace begins inside. It grows when we learn to let go of control over what we cannot change, and when we choose response over reaction. Jesus taught that peace is cultivated through intention, reflection, and consistent practice, not through avoiding conflict or pretending all is well. Peace transforms perspective. When the heart is anchored in it, fear loses its grip and anxiety softens. Challenges remain, but they no longer dominate thought and feeling. Decisions can be made with clarity, and relationships can be approached with patience rather than tension. In this sense, peace is active. It shapes action, not just stillness. Jesus also showed that peace is a choice. Even in difficult circumstances, we can decide to act from a place of calm rather than frustration, to respond with understanding rather than anger. Each decision becomes a small exercise in cultivating inner stability, a reminder that we are not controlled entirely by external events. Peace requires awareness. It asks us to notice the ways we let worry, resentment, or impatience disturb our inner world. It invites us to pause, breathe, and realign with what is steady and enduring. Jesus' teaching suggests that these small acts of attention, repeated consistently, form the foundation of a life centered in peace. This peace is deeply connected to trust. When the heart believes in the presence of goodness, in guidance that extends beyond immediate perception, and in the possibility of learning from challenges, fear diminishes. The world may be uncertain, but the soul can remain stable. Peace is both a refuge and a guiding light. It also shapes relationships. A person who cultivates peace is less likely to react impulsively, more likely to listen deeply, and more capable of offering compassion. Peace flows outward, influencing the environment around us. In this way, it is not passive. It actively transforms interactions, communities, and even conflicts. Jesus taught that peace is stronger than violence, quieter than anger, and more enduring than control. It requires courage, because it asks the heart to remain steady in circumstances that are often unstable. But it also offers freedom from constant worry, from the need to manipulate outcomes, and from being controlled by fear. Daily practice makes peace real. It can begin with something as simple as a moment of stillness in the morning, a choice to respond with patience in conversation, or an awareness of gratitude amidst challenge. These small practices accumulate, creating an inner foundation that withstands life's storms. Ultimately, the peace Jesus described is transformative. It changes how we see ourselves, others, and the world. It allows clarity in decision-making, resilience in hardship, and gentleness in relationships. It is a peace that does not depend on circumstances, but on a steady heart and a mindful, trusting spirit. Living with this peace is a continuous journey. It is not achieved once, but cultivated moment by moment, through choices, reflection, and deliberate attention. When it takes root, it becomes a guide, a refuge, and a quiet strength that endures beyond the shifting tides of life. In embracing this peace, we discover that life need not be defined by anxiety or reaction. Calmness becomes a companion, trust a guide, and resilience a natural outcome. In this steady state, the wisdom of Jesus reveals itself most clearly. True peace is possible, and it begins within. Chapter 6. Trust over worry. Worry is a constant companion in life. It creeps into our minds when we consider the future, the unknown, or the challenges we cannot control. Yet Jesus spoke gently, but clearly, about an alternative: trust. Daily, simple trust. Trust that allows the heart to rest, even when circumstances feel uncertain. Worry may feel protective. It convinces us that by anticipating every possible outcome, we can prevent failure or pain. But Jesus taught that worry is ultimately draining. It consumes energy, clouds judgment, and diminishes the ability to act wisely. Worry attempts to control what is beyond control and often achieves nothing but anxiety. Trust, by contrast, is active. It is not passivity or neglect. It is engagement with life guided by faith that choices made with integrity, care, and intention are never wasted. Trust does not eliminate responsibility, it enhances it. When we trust, we act deliberately, without being ruled by fear or obsession with results. Jesus often invited people to look at the world with clarity. He encouraged observation, understanding, and reflection, but not compulsive anxiety. The birds of the air do not fret over survival, he noted, and yet they are provided for. Worry may give the illusion of control, but trust connects us to a reality beyond what our eyes can see, a truth that sustains even when outcomes are unknown. Trust also shapes perspective. It teaches patience, allowing us to focus on what can be done today rather than obsessing over tomorrow. It shifts energy from fear into constructive action. When trust leads, the mind is clearer, the heart is lighter, and the spirit is steadier. Choosing trust requires conscious effort. It is not always easy to release fear or let go of imagined disasters. But Jesus emphasized that trust grows with practice. Each decision to act with faith, each moment of letting go of fear, strengthens the capacity to rely on what is enduring rather than fleeting. Trust transforms relationships as well. When the heart is not consumed with worry, we can be fully present with others. Anxiety often narrows attention, leaving little space for empathy, listening, or connection. Trust frees the mind to see clearly and respond with wisdom, patience, and understanding. In daily life, trust can appear in small ways. Choosing to act despite fear, speaking kindly when emotions are high, or maintaining integrity when outcomes are uncertain. These moments are quiet, yet they accumulate, building a foundation of resilience and inner peace. Jesus also highlighted the rhythm of life. Each day has its tasks, its challenges, and its opportunities. Trust invites us to focus on today's responsibilities without being overwhelmed by tomorrow's unknowns. Worry fractures attention, while trust gathers it, allowing action that is deliberate and mindful. There is freedom in trust. Freedom from the endless loops of what-if thinking. Freedom from trying to manipulate every outcome. Freedom to move forward with courage, knowing that life unfolds in ways that may surprise us, guide us, and shape us in ways beyond our immediate comprehension. Trust, in Jesus' teaching is deeply connected to faith. It is a reliance not only on what we can do, but on what is larger than ourselves. Trust is the heart's recognition that life, while unpredictable, can be met with calm, clarity, and purpose. Ultimately, living with trust over worry is a daily practice. It asks for attention, intention, and courage. Each day offers the opportunity to choose faith instead of fear, action instead of anxiety, and calm instead of chaos. By choosing trust, we find steadiness in uncertainty. We discover that life is manageable, not because fear is eliminated, but because the heart has found a deeper source of strength. In this steady trust, the wisdom of Jesus becomes alive. Worry may occupy the mind, but trust guides the soul. Chapter 7. The Power of Kindness. Kindness is one of the simplest, yet most profound, ways to live well. Jesus taught that small acts, offered sincerely and without expectation, carry power far beyond what we often imagine. A gentle word, a listening ear, a quiet gesture of care. These are the building blocks of a life shaped by wisdom and compassion. In a world that often rewards achievement, attention, and influence, kindness can seem subtle or even insignificant. Yet Jesus showed that its effects are transformative. It can heal unseen wounds, restore dignity, and create connections that endure even when circumstances change. Kindness is not flashy, but it is lasting. True kindness is active. It requires awareness and intention. It asks us to notice others, to step into their world with empathy, and to respond in ways that affirm their humanity. It may be as simple as holding a door, offering encouragement, or extending patience in moments of frustration. These small actions ripple outward in ways we cannot fully measure. Kindness is also courageous. It asks us to act without certainty of reward or recognition. It asks us to prioritize compassion over judgment, generosity over self-interest, and presence over distraction. In a culture that often prioritizes speed, efficiency, and competition, kindness slows us down, refocuses attention, and reminds us of what is essential. Jesus taught that kindness is a reflection of the heart. It flows naturally from a life that values understanding, empathy, and connection. When the inner world is generous, it expresses itself outwardly. Conversely, when the heart is closed or hardened, acts of kindness are rare, mechanical, or absent. Cultivating kindness requires inner attention as much as outward action. Kindness also has a multiplying effect. One small gesture can inspire another. One gentle word can change the tone of a conversation. One act of patience can interrupt a cycle of conflict. This quiet power reminds us that wisdom often manifests not in grand gestures, but in everyday choices. Living kindly requires mindfulness. It asks us to notice opportunities to act with care, even when doing so may be inconvenient or unnoticed. It asks us to consider the impact of words, the tone of voice, and the quality of attention we give to others. Each act, no matter how small, is a contribution to a larger atmosphere of compassion and understanding. Kindness is not weakness. It does not mean allowing harm, excusing injustice, or avoiding boundaries. Instead, it is a choice to respond in ways that reflect thoughtfulness, respect, and integrity. It strengthens relationships, builds trust, and fosters resilience in both giver and receiver. Jesus' teaching on kindness extends beyond immediate interactions. It encourages a way of seeing the world that emphasizes connection rather than separation, generosity rather than scarcity, and empathy rather than indifference. This perspective transforms daily life, turning ordinary moments into opportunities to practice love in action. The wisdom of kindness lies in its simplicity and accessibility. Everyone can practice it, regardless of age, status, or circumstance. Its power does not depend on circumstance, it depends on intention. A kind act, even unnoticed by others, has value and influence beyond what the eye can see. Ultimately, kindness shapes character. It cultivates patience, humility, and attentiveness. It softens the heart, broadens perspective, and invites the presence of peace and joy. By practicing kindness consistently, we create a life rooted in connection, integrity, and quiet strength. To live with kindness is to embrace a principle that is at once simple and profound. It requires no extraordinary talent, no special resources, only attention, intention, and a willingness to act with care. In this way, kindness becomes a daily practice, a form of wisdom, and a path toward a life that reflects the heart of Jesus' teaching. Chapter 8. Integrity of the Heart. Integrity is more than honesty or following rules. Jesus taught that true integrity begins in the heart, in the alignment of thought, word, and action. It is the quiet consistency of living according to principles, even when no one is watching, even when the world rewards shortcuts or appearances. Many people focus on outward image, what others see, what others praise, or how situations appear. Jesus warned that this is fragile and often deceptive. True wisdom arises when the inner life matches outward behavior, when beliefs, values, and actions are in harmony. The heart experiences clarity and freedom. Integrity is also courage. It asks us to stand firm when it would be easier to compromise. It asks us to speak the truth gently but firmly, even when it is unpopular. It asks for patience and discernment when the temptation to cut corners or deceive is strong. Integrity does not avoid challenge. It faces it with steadiness and resolve. A person of integrity does not live for approval or accolades. They do not manipulate perception to gain advantage. Instead, they cultivate trust, reliability, and authenticity. Others notice this, not because of grand displays, but because the consistency of character is unmistakable. Integrity builds relationships that are lasting, grounded in truth and mutual respect. Jesus also emphasized that integrity shapes inner life. A heart aligned with values is not tormented by guilt or contradiction. Peace arises from knowing that actions reflect principles. Conversely, when thought and behavior are out of sync, anxiety, shame, and dissatisfaction naturally follow. Living with integrity is a form of self-care as well as moral discipline. Integrity manifests in everyday choices. It appears in small decisions, how we respond in conflict, how we speak when frustrated, how we honor commitments. These daily actions, repeated consistently, form the foundation of character. Integrity is not built in extraordinary moments alone. It is cultivated quietly, day by day. Living with integrity also requires self-awareness. It asks us to examine our motives, to recognize when ambition, fear, or pride may influence choices, and to recalibrate as needed. Jesus' teaching encourages reflection. Are our actions consistent with our deepest beliefs? Do our words reflect our true intentions? Are we honest with ourselves as well as others? Integrity is a guiding principle in decision-making. It directs behavior when rules are unclear, when situations are complex, or when the easiest path is not the right one. The heart that values integrity chooses what is right over what is convenient, what is honest over what is advantageous, and what is enduring over what is fleeting. This alignment fosters trust and reliability. People know they can count on someone who lives with integrity. Even in difficult situations, such a person becomes a source of stability, guidance, and reassurance. Integrity does not seek recognition, but it inevitably inspires respect and confidence. Jesus' teaching reminds us that integrity is both internal and relational. It shapes how we see ourselves and how we interact with the world. It cultivates humility, honesty, and courage. It creates the conditions for peace of mind, resilience, and wisdom to flourish. Ultimately, integrity of the heart is a lifelong pursuit. It is not perfection, but commitment. Each day offers opportunities to act with honesty, to reflect on alignment, and to correct course when necessary. The wisdom of Jesus invites us to practice this attentively, recognizing that integrity shapes both the person we are and the life we live. To cultivate integrity is to honor the inner self, to respect others, and to live in harmony with enduring principles. In this quiet, steady alignment, the heart experiences freedom and life becomes guided by wisdom rather than circumstance. Chapter 9. Mercy without measure. Mercy is at the heart of Jesus' teaching. He showed that it is not simply a response to wrongdoing, but a way of seeing the world, a choice to respond with compassion and understanding, even when judgment seems easier. Mercy is not limited by fairness or expectation. It is a generosity of the heart that transforms both giver and receiver. Jesus taught that mercy is powerful because it breaks cycles. Anger, resentment, and punishment often create only more harm. Mercy, however, interrupts this pattern. When we extend compassion to those who fail, hurt, or disappoint, we open the door to healing. The act of mercy does not ignore wrongdoing, but it refuses to let it dominate the soul or define relationships entirely. Mercy requires courage. It asks us to soften the heart when the instinct is to harden it. It asks us to respond with understanding when the mind demands retaliation. Mercy is not weakness, but strength guided by patience, empathy, and a commitment to the greater good. Jesus also showed that mercy is relational. It restores connection where separation might otherwise prevail. It allows people to acknowledge mistakes without being consumed by shame. It encourages transformation, not only in the person receiving mercy, but in the one offering it. The practice of mercy shapes character, cultivates humility, and nurtures wisdom. Mercy often looks beyond immediate circumstances. It recognizes potential rather than only failure. It sees the person beneath actions and encourages growth rather than condemnation. This perspective transforms how we respond to mistakes, missteps, and misunderstandings in daily life. It asks us to consider not only justice, but compassion, and not only rules, but hearts. The practice of mercy also requires discernment. Jesus did not suggest blind tolerance or acceptance of harm. True mercy is measured not by indulgence, but by a balance of compassion and wisdom. It knows when to act gently and when to protect oneself or others. It chooses the path that leads to restoration rather than revenge. Mercy extends inward as well. Many of us carry regrets, self-criticism, or guilt. Extending compassion to ourselves is a form of mercy. It allows growth without paralyzing shame, understanding without judgment, and renewal without repetition of self-condemnation. Mercy for oneself strengthens the capacity to offer it to others. In daily life, mercy may appear in small ways: a word of forgiveness, patience in difficult conversation, an act of generosity towards someone who struggles. Though these actions may seem minor, their effects ripple far beyond what is visible. Mercy shapes environments, softens hearts, and opens possibilities for reconciliation. Jesus emphasized that mercy is abundant, not limited. It is a principle without measure, meant to guide all relationships. One act of mercy inspires another, and one compassionate choice creates a pattern that can shift communities, families, and friendships. This multiplication reflects the enduring power of his teaching. Ultimately, mercy transforms perspective. It teaches patience, understanding, and the courage to look beyond immediate harm. It cultivates resilience, both emotional and spiritual, and invites a life lived from the heart rather than from fear or rigid judgment. The wisdom of Jesus reminds us that mercy is not a single act, but a habit, a way of living. Each day offers opportunities to practice it, to soften where we might harden, to extend where we might withhold, and to respond with compassion even when it is difficult. To live with mercy without measure is to participate in the quiet, profound work of healing. It is to shape the heart, guide relationships, and reflect a life grounded in wisdom, compassion, and enduring love. Chapter 10: Hope that Endures. Hope is more than wishing for better circumstances. Jesus taught that true hope is rooted in faithfulness, not in fleeting events or external success. It is an inner confidence that life has meaning, that challenges are not the end, and that possibility exists even when the future is unclear. In a world full of uncertainty, setbacks, and disappointment, hope can feel fragile. Yet Jesus showed that enduring hope is not fragile at all. It is steady, resilient, and sustaining. It is a force that anchors the heart, providing courage and strength when difficulties arise and perseverance when despair threatens to take hold. Enduring hope does not deny reality. It does not ignore pain, loss, or failure. Instead, it acknowledges these experiences fully while maintaining the belief that they are not the final word. Hope sees beyond immediate circumstances and trusts that life's story continues, that lessons can be learned, and that renewal is possible. Jesus often emphasized the power of looking forward. Hope invites movement rather than stagnation. It encourages us to act with intention, to grow despite obstacles, and to trust that even difficult experiences can lead to wisdom, compassion, and transformation. It is hope that motivates resilience, not passive waiting. Hope shapes perspective. It allows the heart to endure setbacks without despair and to find meaning in adversity. It transforms challenges into opportunities for growth and loss into a teacher rather than a trap. The person who lives with hope sees possibilities where others may see only limits and finds courage where others may see only fear. Hope is also relational. It allows us to encourage others, to support those who are struggling, and to create communities of resilience and care. When hope is shared, it multiplies. A single act of encouragement or a simple word of reassurance can spark strength and courage in ways that extend far beyond what we realize. Daily life offers countless opportunities to practice hope. It appears in decisions to persevere when progress seems slow, to speak gently when conflict arises, and to maintain trust when outcomes are uncertain. These small acts, repeated consistently, nurture a mindset that sustains the heart over time. Jesus taught that hope is not tied to the absence of difficulty, but to the presence of faithfulness. It is rooted in trust, patience, and a sense of purpose that transcends temporary circumstances. Hope endures because it rests on principles, values, and a broader understanding of life's unfolding, rather than on the unpredictable flow of events. Hope also fosters resilience. It equips the heart to recover from disappointment, to rise after failure, and to maintain clarity when emotions run high. It is an inner light that does not waver with external storms, and a guide that helps navigate the uncertainties of life with steadiness and courage. Ultimately, hope transforms the way we live. It shapes choices, guides actions, and influences the way we see ourselves and the world. It calls us to trust in growth, in possibility, and in the potential for renewal. Enduring hope invites us to embrace life fully, even in moments of challenge, and to act from a place of confidence rather than fear. The wisdom of Jesus reminds us that hope is a practice as much as it is a feeling. Each day offers opportunities to nurture it, to act with faith, and to encourage it in others. To live with hope that endures is to participate in life with courage, purpose, and a steadfast trust in what is good and true. In choosing hope, we discover the capacity to face uncertainty without despair, to respond to difficulty with resilience, and to walk through life guided by a vision of what is possible, not only what is immediate. Hope, enduring and steadfast, becomes a companion for every step of the journey.